actually boils down to is that you have to work on yourself and work on becoming aware that your point of view is the generator of what you view. And that will bring us to another level in observation, which was what Jung referred to as the transcendent level. And that level, there is no more, things are no more particles, but then we think in terms of fields and waves, and then the observer simply becomes much more aware that what he or she observes is actually what we're asking for, and what we ask we shall receive. And so this takes us to a whole new level of behavior or of existence. So then the most important thing that you have to do is to work on your own point of view. Now, given the old paradigm, we work on the world. We have to do something to the other, or we have to do something to the child, or if we are in a conflict situation, we want to remove what is experienced as a problem out there. And this work, when it's taken to its logical end, would say that I have to change the way I look at the world. Then the world will change. If I look at cancer as an enemy, and I subsequently conceive of it as a war on cancer, then I will create that enemy. I will make cancer into this enemy.
Fear.
Yes, which is then this wrong point of view. So then we work on a change of the way we experience the world, not the results of the wrong experience of the world. If I experience cancer as an enemy and as a war, I am going to make it a war.
But how can you experience cancer as something friendly?
Exactly. That's the whole point. Right at the moment, it's experienced as something, as an enemy. But one can experience it as, for instance, as feedback, as the body trying to tell us something.
So what was the example of that you had a client that experienced and then she gets cancer of what? You have some example to that people evoke it?
Well, yes. The idea would be that we create our diseases, and because we basically, our outlook on reality is asking for these diseases. If I experience cancer as an enemy and as a war, it will become that. Yes, this is the problem, because once we move to that transcendent level, this is what becomes the experience of the world, and that is that we are creating what is befalling us. And that's why it's a hell of a shock to the experience at the lower level, to have to find out that yes, I am creating what I am experiencing, that what I see is basically a question, and that question will be answered. If I am experiencing my husband as promiscuous, I will create that eventually. That's why, yes, that's why this understanding of observation is shocking, because we still tend to fall back into this separation of the looked and the looker, but they are one. And when we can deal with that at a yet deeper level, which we call the transcendent level, then nothing is separate. The cancer is a part of me. My body is creating that cancer. So at some level, I am creating it. You understand?
Because it's part of him.
Yes, everything that occurs in my body, is my creation. And of course, this approach is taking us even beyond that, and that means that what is around me is also my. So the correct self-concept, which creates this field of view, is that the field is the self. Of course, my body is part of myself. So of course, at some level, I am running a belief or a program that is generating what my body is creating. But what happens in this fragmented sense of self is that I tend to experience certain parts of what's happening in that self as not part of the self. So I'm experiencing it as alien to me because I'm not owning up to the whole self, which is the field. I'm not owning up, for instance, to the fact that what I am experiencing in you is a part of me. Equally, I'm not owning up to the fact that what is happening in my body is part of me. So when I have a pain somewhere, I also tend to relapse to the old viewpoint where it's experienced as something external to the self. The same way I would experience that my tending to see my partner as promiscuous is part of my perception. You see, we tend to relapse into that sense of separateness to what is experienced, be it the body or be it the other. And the transcendent function experiences the whole as self. And that's a hell of a challenge, and one cannot think oneself into that transcendent experience. One can only, by hooking up the looker and the looked, which is like the medicine to heal the self, of which everything else is a result. Only by systematically practicing this, constantly realizing that what I am seeing out there is a part of me. You see, everything we see in everybody is things that everybody has in them, but we tend to see them as external. I'm also an addict. I'm also a liar. But we tend to see these things as external. But when we just simply work on hooking up the looked and the looker and catching our projections, slowly but surely the two sides of the self connect. And then you get this leap to a more expanded state of self. Yes, and then that sense of self does not see things as separate anymore. So then, of course, the pain in my arm, I will tend to experience it as I am creating it at some level. And then you get the shift of what does it mean? What does the pain in my arm mean? The old paradigm tries to understand the body in terms of how, mechanics, left brain mechanics, and as separate from the observer, the person, the host. But this new approach would then the approach to bodily symptoms is more based on the why. And then you get someone that generates a terrible pain in arm pain, and that actually they would like to choke someone with that arm, but they have dissociated from that part of the self. That's the self that is fragmented in multiple viewpoints or identities. And then the body is simply playing out that identity, that piece of the self that the person does not want to connect to.
So that physical problem has to be